why are you doing this, maybe?
Yeah, so I'll start because it gives us at least 2 or 3 minutes before Andre's talk, and then he can get the bulk of the attention of this hour. So for those that have recently joined, just that you're aware, we are recording this event, so please put off your webcam if you're not comfortable. My name is Hanneli Marsh. I'm the Managing Director of Wirecard here for Sub-Sahara Africa. And it's my great pleasure to welcome you here today on this call. I'm personally very excited about this initiative. It is something that is very close to our heart, and in fact, as a team, we had a lot of discussions around creating what we called a Hope for Tourism campaign. After speaking to so many of our affected clients and our friends in the tourism industry, and just seeing in general what's happening out there, we knew something needed to be done. And it's quite clear, though, that this crisis is not the one that discriminates in terms of industry, and that the impact of this is much wider than just tourism. So you'll find that this entire series was designed not just for tourism, but also for all of the other industries out there. I don't know about you, but I've definitely over the past few weeks felt a huge range of emotions. And I've seen those in my kids as well, and people that you speak to in general. And most of these emotions have a very strong underlying tone of uncertainty and potentially even grief. And I think that's one of the things that we need to chat about here is how do we change some of these emotions away from the uncertainty to the more positive impacts. Now, I have a almost 4-year-old daughter, and for the rest of you out there with young kids, I'm sure you are also absolute experts now in every possible animation or TV series out there. And the one that comes to mind for me when I think about this campaign is the one Frozen. A 4-year-old daughter and Frozen, as you know, are best friends. My daughter Yuna has imaginary friends at the moment in Anna and Elsa and Olaf and Sven. So, but the interesting thing about this movie specifically for me is the saying that if all seems lost and you don't know where to go, the best thing you can do is to just do the next right thing. And I think that is why we also kicked off this campaign, to give us the opportunity to start dreaming about the new future. And that is what Andre will speak to us today, is around what we'll probably term the new normal. Later on this week, on Friday, Elsabe Opperman, I see she's on the call as well, she will share with us the strategies and the tools that are there and available today to help us deal this crisis. So deal the emotions and help us to help and support us through all of the things that we need to deal to get to our new normal. So Elsabe, I know, will also tell you that on Friday, but I'll say that too. There is help out there. So please don't feel alone. Elsabe has very kindly shared all of her resources with us and made those available to our clients. So we'll also share that with you during the course of this week. And then next week, Peter Thomas, who's a master facilitator, will give us the practical tools that we can use to build this new normal. What does this new business look like? What does our new future look like? And not just the nice talk and the bed talk part, but the actual tools. So what are the questions we need to ask? How can you physically with yourself and or your team start building the future plan and align your people to the future plan? So that is for next week. So please sign in for all of these. They are all available to yourselves, and please share it with your friends and colleagues too. Now, I think we're about at the right level to get Andre going. So I'll just do a few of the admin topics before we start. Firstly, tech support, as I mentioned, Terry will do the muting for us and make sure that you see the right person on the screen. So during the talk, everyone will be muted and the chat box will be off, that we can just keep it as clean and simple for the speaker. At the end of Andre's talk, if there's time available, we'll allow some time for Q&A. At that point, we'll open the chat box that you can jot down your questions that you may have for Andre or for myself, and then we'll answer as many of those in the chat box, and the ones we don't get to answer, we'll answer in a follow-up email. It is also, if you feel that your signal is not great, please feel free to put your webcams off at this point in time, that you can see Andre in full view and that you can have the best possible sound quality. And then it's always a good idea for a session like this to grab yourself a cup of tea or coffee. It's available wherever you normally make your tea or coffee, and hopefully by now you've trained your kids to do it for you. So without any more waiting, I'm incredibly proud today to introduce you to Andre du Toit. He doesn't really need an intro, but I'll give him a short one in any event. Andre is a much loved radio personality. If you're in Cape Town, you can hear him on Smile FM. He calls himself the big positive guy, and he is incredibly passionate about finding and sharing all the good news, which is in this time more important than ever. He's an award-winning speaker and a speaker coach, so he also loves to pay it forward. He's a master motivator and a mentor and a coach, and I'm very lucky to call him my friend. So Andre, this is all over to you. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Hanlie. Thanks very much for such a nice and warm welcome. I'm just delighted to see so many of you here, and delighted to see how many friends I have in the tourism industry. It's lovely to look through. I wish I had a few extra minutes to just flick through and say hello to all the people that I've seen here, that are friends from current friends and past friends as well. So welcome. Hanlie, firstly, congratulations to you and your team at Wirecard. One of the first initiatives which I saw as the lockdown happened is that certain companies gave away certain things. And initially, and I think one of the first ones was Microsoft made Microsoft Teams available. And immediately some people said it was cynical. But in discussion with Microsoft, the reality is they felt a desperate need to give back. And one of the things that I have noticed across the industries is companies all across the line have turned around and said, what can we do to make a difference? So for any of you that are thinking that this is a pitching thing to see if we can get business, the reality is this team is not doing it for those reasons. They're doing it because we're there to support you and to see if there's anything that we can do to help. The reality is that we're living in very unusual times. Will it pay off? I absolutely do believe it will pay off. Business will never be the same again going into the future. And I think what happens is that when we do that, it also means that we look at our suppliers and we even look at our customers and choose the ones that we are actually going to pick. And that really comes based on relationships. So well done again to you, Hanlie, and your team. Firstly, to all the people that are in the travel industry, I must just say to you, I feel your pain. I am a professional speaker. Technically, I am illegal. One of the things that I may not do is stand up in front of large crowds. And that, in essence, is my job. And that probably will be the very last industry which will be opened up. And at that point, only will I be able to earn an income. I watched on the Sunday when the president, they was talking about it, and on the Monday morning, and I'm sure you guys went through this process as well, is that every stitch of business I had for the next 3 to 4 months was cancelled instantaneously with no reprieve, and there was no thing, and any deposits that had been paid had to be returned. So I'm not standing here to motivate you from a motivator's point of view, where I'm sitting with buckets of money in my pocket, and that I'm sitting in an industry where I'm getting a salary. I'm not one of those people. I'm exactly like you. My income has been removed, and I have to recreate myself as well. So my compassion is for those of you that have already lost your jobs, and for those of you that are wondering if you're going to have a job when you go back. My heart is with you, and what happens, I'm going to be speaking to you specifically. Firstly, it is fascinating to see Zoom taking over as one of the preferred communication mechanisms. If you're a conspiracy theorist, let me share the following with you. In February, Zoom had 10 million users. In March, they have 200 million users, and the number is growing astronomically. Terry Winship, who does all my sessions for me, is watching it. And today, again, we were seeing new updates happening almost every single day, because as we coming along, we are asking for changes. Even the message that you got in the waiting room was an update that happened in the last 24 hours. So these are all new things that are coming along, and we're going to be using them. If you are the conspiracy theorist, let me just share this with you. Zoom, although their web address is zoom.us, is actually a Chinese organization. And so everything comes out of China. So we're using a Chinese thing. And if you're really a conspiracy theorist, all the encryption programs that we have are held by the Chinese government. So for those of you that are worried about in terms of security, this was never meant to be the thing for personal and very confidential conversations. But there's everything, and there's anybody in Chinese government listening, listen very carefully, because hopefully you'll learn something in terms of the tourist industry. All right, I don't say this very lightly, but I want to say is that I am so proud of our president. Like in 1994, when Nelson Mandela took over, I believe there were probably no other persons in the world who could have transitioned us from the old government to the new government. And Nelson Mandela stood up and he performed a role which I think he was born to, I think he was destined, I think it was fate, and probably even God ordained. When I look, and when Cyril Ramaphosa came into government, I was a big supporter. But the reality is that he has really come into his own in the middle of this crisis. He really is a man for his time. And I want to say is that worldwide, from the World Health Organization to the BBC to other governments, everyone is turning to us and saying South Africa has been one of the most proactive countries in terms of handling this lockdown. And I'll share a couple of figures with you. The statistics are alarming. I'm a mathematician by training. And so for me, I keep going back to the maths and saying, what can we do and what are the statistics showing us? Here's an interesting stat for you. When we were at 1,500 people sick, and we compare that to the United States when they were 1,500 people sick. They were just 18 days ahead of us, by the way. The current figure today, 760,000 people are infected with the COVID-19 virus in the United States, and over 40,000 have died. It has already exceeded the number of deaths that happened in the Vietnam War. When the UK was at 1,500 deaths and at 1,500 cases, and we were at 1,500 cases, remember at 1,500 we went into lockdown. What happens is that the UK decided to do something different. They believed in the herd mentality. They thought that what we have to do is people have to get infected and they'll build up immunity, and there is the thing called the herd immunity, but it did not work very well. And the UK at this moment in time is sitting with 120,000 cases and the horrific figure of 15,000 deaths. Just to put that into some sort of perspective, that's about 1 in 8 people that are getting it are dying. And those are quite horrific figures. So when we look at our statistics, let's just quickly chat about what's actually happening here. When we went into lockdown, the strangest thing happened. Our numbers started staying level, and that's not normal statistically. And so Professor Karim, who's been on for this whole week, for those of you who don't know him, he's just been voted into the Royal Society for Scientists in the UK. It's only about 6 people that really have been invited in from outside. He is one of the top epidemiologists in the world and has been advising our president on what to do. He gave an enormously powerful presentation, which I don't think many people have watched, because he threw up a lot of statistics. But a couple of things happened. The day that we brought in the lockdown, the numbers started stabilizing, and probably more so. So even he says one of the things that he thought of was potentially we weren't testing enough people. And so what he did is they've put now 28,000 healthcare workers onto the ground. We've now tested 100,000 people. The only reason why this government is not testing more is that the kits to do the tests are exceptionally difficult to get hold of. And one of the things that we're doing is we're bidding against some very big players in the world that are trying to get these kits at the same time. But we are testing as fast as we can. And even with that massive escalation in terms of testing, what happens is that we haven't had any significant increase. So what can we deduce from that? One of the things is potentially, because we locked down so quickly, the virus didn't come from within South Africa, it came from across our borders. And one of the things, because we locked international travel so quickly, is that we may have saved ourselves a huge amount of pain and a huge number of deaths. So again, congratulations to our president and to our government for the initiatives that they're taking. For those of you who don't know, this morning they made additional announcements in KwaZulu-Natal where they strengthened up the lockdown. Yes, I didn't say relax the lockdown, they're the other way around. There are so many people getting it at the moment, based mainly in Durban Central, that the army and the police have sent there, and they said a number of people are completely ignoring the lockdown. People are walking around, cars are moving around, and what happens, the police and stuff are going to close that down. So we always run the risk that if we go the other way around, if the deaths or the number of cases increases, that we will change and actually go backwards, that we may go back into stricter lockdown. And I want to say, for many people that are just sitting and saying, I'm waiting 2 weeks and it's all going to be finished, it's not finished. It's not finished. In fact, I want to say to you is that it may only be starting. So that's not very encouraging, but this is the reality. When Professor Karim said, what happens when we get past the lockdown? He gave us 3 different scenarios, 2 of which he discounted immediately. And the third one that he said is that when we go out of lockdown, for the first time, a large number of people are going to get sick. A large number of people are going to get sick, and a percentage of those people are going to die. Now, that is a very, very somber statement. In the audience today, there is a historian, Dr. Dean Allen. I listened to his presentation yesterday, and he spoke about the 1918 epidemic, which killed 50 million people. And interestingly enough, South Africa had the 5th highest death rate in the world because we made a tragic mistake. One of the mistakes we made is that when people got the virus, we didn't quarantine them long enough. If I remember correctly, I think he said 3 days, and then what happens, people were let loose. And the reality is that cost us 50,000 lives. I don't think any government today, and I struggle to understand places like the United States, somebody's going to have to be held accountable at some stage and say, if you're going to lose 100,000 Americans or 150,000 Americans, I think every single decision that the government has made is going to come under scrutiny. And I think what happens, that's only right. And in our case as well, I think our president takes the role of Solomon, where he's going to turn around and say, we've got to save the economy, but we've got to save lives. Obviously, there's a point at which more people will be struggling in terms of the economy. If you start saying people are starting to die of starvation, and not that number of people, you've got to open the doors. But that's the wisdom of Solomon, and you've got to do that on the information that you're being fed. All right, so on those lovely, wonderful points that we've got there, let's just quickly have a look and see the only guidelines that we have in terms of what's going to happen when the lockdown is finished. A number of people, and I actually got quite emotional the other day, I was talking to a large group of people, and the reality was they were also in a difficult situation, and many of them haven't been paid for 2 months. And the reality was they were not going to get paid into the future because their money's all forward paid. And I sat there and listened to their excitement about the lockdown being finished, and they were speaking about parties and braais and dinners and things like that. That, I can assure you, is not going to happen. It is not going to be a case that on the 4th of May, the president says, back to work, off you go. That is just an impossibility. Let me give you an example of what some countries are doing. Austria, for example, has gone open, and in their first week made a decision to open up hairdressers, garden centers, and building supply companies. In Denmark, they opened up kindergartens, which for me was a fascinating decision. I was just wondering if you like settings like canaries in a mine. You set the little ones free first and see if they survive. And then what happens is that you make a decision afterwards. For me, that was the craziest decision. Every single country, Italy has said that one of their first businesses that they will open up, because they see it as a critical business in terms of the Italian government, is bookshops. So every single government is going to make different decisions and say to you, these industries are important. And one of the things we're going to quickly see, I see there's 1 or 2 property people here as well. We are very quickly going to see how highly our government rates the property industry and potentially the tourism industry. Again, weighing it up against the chances of, is this an industry which is worth a lot more money, but also potentially can cause more disease? So we're going to watch those interesting numbers. India today has extended the lockdown for 3 months, but like ourselves, has relaxed some of the initiatives that are happening. And in their instance, what they've done is they've relaxed farming. And so farming, fishing, anything in terms of food production. Obviously, you're talking about a country with 1.3 billion people, and you've got to feed the nation. So anything to do with farming has been relaxed with lots of provisos. I mean, and I think one of the common provisos across all the countries that I've seen is no large gatherings. And what's a large gathering? Well, a large gathering is 10 people. The other thing, which as well is protective gear, is going to be compulsory. I think what happens is if you haven't got a mask, get yourself as many masks as you've got, because you're probably going to be wearing them for the next 3 to 5 months at least, and if not into next year. even things like gloves and sanitizer and stuff will become de facto fashion wear for you into the next couple of months. So that's not going to change at all. All right, New Zealand has also opened up one or two industries, but the reason I mentioned them is because they have very, very tentatively opened up the tourism industry. And when I say they've opened up the tourism industry, they have done it under enormous restrictions. So again, you might have a situation where you can't have more than 10 people in a room. So it's difficult for restaurants. So what you may have in future, and these are pure speculations, you may have an opportunity where, for example, restaurants will open, but you would have to have no more than 1/3 of your capacity of the people in there. So there would be empty tables in between. Your waitrons would be dressed up in protective gear. I don't know how much fun that would be for me to go to a restaurant. In terms of international travel, for those of you that are dependent on that, I hesitate to say that that is going to be lifted soon. And I say that with the greatest amount of compassion in my heart. But the reality is that one of the things that has saved us in this country and is regarded as one of our saving graces is that we didn't allow a lot of people. If we do start allowing people, and I see the Emirates Airlines have already started doing this, is starting massive testing. I saw some film footage of it the other day where every single passenger is being seated and actually being tested. It's a whole process of all kinds of things, making absolutely 100% sure that you don't have the virus. And I suspect if we do start having international travel, it may look like that. And the reality is that that's not fun. It's not fun to travel like that, especially if you're a holiday maker. So I suggest that in the beginning, international travel will be limited to probably some business people. All right. So what are we going to expect? We are going to expect a very gradual lifting of the restrictions. Every single day or every single second day, something's going to be happening. I don't know if you're aware of the fact that we've already started lifting some of the restrictions in this country. I'll give you a few. For example, the ports are completely blocked up. The ships are standing there with cargo in their holds, and people have shipped things to the harbors and they need to go. Those things are going to cause enormous blockages when we open it up. So what happens, that's been allowed to start unpacking and repacking ships in terms of export. Export in terms of cargo and freight is not seen as a dangerous thing because of the time taking. They believe the virus will not survive on containers or on packaging or anything like that. So there have been things. The mines in South Africa, the coal mines in South Africa have been opened up on one condition, that you are providing coal to Sasol. You can sell hardware as long as you can only sell it to a plumber or electrician or some sort of person who's involved in essential services. Mechanics are allowed to work as long as they're working on essential vehicles like police cars, ambulances, military vehicles, and things like that. So everything at the moment is opening, but very, very slowly, and we're going to see that changing all the time. The second thing which we're going to see is that social distancing, and I'll speak a little bit more about that, is going to become even more critical. In Cape Town, we've had the disastrous scenario, and some of you are aware of these things, in places like the Bayside Checkers, where some of the people there got the virus, the Boertesig Spa, where people got the Athlone police station, the Miners police station. The reality is that if the virus does break out when we're out of lockdown, is that wherever it breaks out again, that is going to go under control and under quarantine again. Now, people say to me, but in the police station, it's not the police station that's affected. It's not. It's the fact that everybody who's sat next to their policeman for a couple of hours or even had some intimate contact with them, shaking hands or whatever it was, those people go instantaneously into quarantine. So for all of us that go out into the world, every single time we go into a crowded room, if one person there has it, they will check it. I don't know if you all know how they check it. They check you via your cell phone. What happens is that every single time a person, and it's the most incredible system which I've seen, every single time somebody is found to be positive, they run it through the database. The database then matches them to every single cell phone that was in their proximity. And what happens, that's how they've been tracking down the people. And it's working fantastically well. So don't hide your cell phone. Take it with you. It could save your life because you could have been in contact with someone and at least they can put you into quarantine very, very quickly if you come into someone's place like that. The reality is that we're about to see a lot of people becoming sick and we're about to see a lot of people dying. Thank heavens we have a psychologist coming in on Friday. I have a radio show if you're interested tonight. It's called The Inspirational Hour, but these are hard times. So at 9 o'clock tonight, I'm interviewing Melanie Verwoerd. You might remember her. She is a member of Parliament of President Mandela's Parliament. She was the Irish ambassador. She is a UNICEF ambassador, and she's an incredible political commentator. I'm having her on tonight for one of the reasons is that she and her whole family have been through the COVID virus. And she wrote an article and said, we are all grieving. All of us, whether we like it or not, are feeling some sort of downness or depression, and we don't always know what it is. And tonight she's going to be explaining is that the guys who worked with Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, who did the 5 stages of grief, have identified, and especially in this time, a 6th version of grief, and it's called anticipatory grief. We are already grieving what is still to happen. We're already grieving the people that are yet to die. We're already grieving the businesses that will never come back again. There is an estimate, and I heard the number the other day, that between 100 and 200,000 small businesses will die. I saw Ed Conant, for that was one of the most emotional interviews, speaking to the CEO there, where he said he just couldn't turn his ship around quickly enough. And he was going down to the tune of 400 million rand a week, and he just couldn't survive 3 weeks, and 5 weeks was just out of the question. But 39 subsidiaries. Have you ever heard of companies like CNA and Jet and Legit? Those companies no longer exist. And so for us, it's been a particularly difficult time, and we're going to have to sit down and say, what does it look like in the future? All right. These are fairly heavy decisions and things that I'm discussing with you guys now. So here's the tiny little bit of the motivation. And I must say, this is one of the most difficult presentations I've had to prepare for in a very long time, because the news is really bad and the good is hopeful. The good is hopeful. So what can we look forward to in the future? Well, I want to say to you is that if you've ever been watching DSTV and the satellite starts playing up, one of the things that happens here in Cape Town is that whenever the wind blows really, really hard, my satellite picture goes brrr, there's all kinds of funny things. And what happens is, although I can see the Tygerberg Mountains, when the mist comes up, something always sometimes blocks it. And an amazing thing happens is that when I go to my DSTV Explorer and there's a little button there and you push it, it's called the reboot button, and you push that reboot button, what happens is that when it comes back, the picture comes back as clear as it was before. Now, I've been criticized, and a lot of people say to me is that I've said this is a wonderful opportunity for us to sit and re-look at ourselves, to learn new skills. And some people say to me, you're a hard-assed and you're calloused and you don't know how sad people are and how depressed people are. But the reality is we don't have a choice. I accept that you're sad and I accept that you're depressed. I am as well, and so are most of the people that are in this room. But the reality is we have to keep moving forward, and we have to start saying, I'm a 60-year-old. What do I know about Zoom? What do I know about some of these techie things? Thank God for Terry Winship. I have looked for people to surround myself with, to say, these are the people that are going to take me to the next level. So here are some very practical steps for you to go forward to into the next stage. Number one is, you are only as powerful as the people that you surround yourself with. Listen to me very carefully. You are as powerful as the people that you surround yourself with. These are critical moments in history and in our lives and in the times of our business. One of the first things that happened is that I sat there on that Monday and I watched all my business disappear in 24 hours. What I did the second day is I sat there and I thought, and I was like, what am I going to do? What am I going to do? And then the thought occurred to me, there are people that are in worse off positions than I am. And I immediately started picking up the phone and phoning people and saying to them, are you okay? Is there something I can do for you? Is there somewhere that I can help you? And the reality is that I've had many, many of those phone calls where sometimes it's just mental support, or maybe it's just being a friend. I put it on my social media and I said, how many of you are going to be alone? And interestingly enough, 220 people bothered to respond and said, yes, I am alone. 45 people emailed me to say that I am petrified. I don't have enough money. I don't have internet access, or I have limited internet access, or I'm afraid of being alone for such a long period of time. Those people need to be contacted. I have been phoning between 5 and 15 people every single day. It has taken a huge amount of my time and a huge amount of my mental strength. I want to say to you, those people will remain loyal to me at the end of this process. And I want to say to you as business people, the very best thing that you can do, number one, is to be creating some form of environment for the people that work for you, even if you've had to let them go. You need to be checking in with these people and finding out how they are and creating some sense of community. We cannot just let people go into the ether. The reality is, please God, from my lips to God's ears, that we've managed to block this thing down, that not so many people get sick, that by August or September, everything is all up and running. You're going to need many of these people back, and especially the good ones. Make sure that you stay in contact with them. One of the things that we've been doing for our speaker group is having a weekly cocktail hour, 1 hour, and every person just gets about 3 minutes just to fall in and just say, listen, this is what we're doing, and this is where we are. Malcolm Gladwell, in his book Outliers, spoke about something called the Dunbar 150, and maybe at a later stage we can have a full chat about this. But Dunbar 150 really is a very strong scientific theory, which says is that all our lives, including our personal and business lives, are normally affected by less than 150 people. In other words, all the key decisions in our business and where we get our customers and where the goodwill comes from, everything comes from usually less than 150 people. There are large numbers that we deal with, 1,500, but certain key individuals make this massive difference. I've been using a little thing for a lot of the people that are depressed and saying, can you identify 30 people in your life, not work colleagues, anybody, family, friends, cousins, anybody, people that you've worked with, that you believe care and love you and want the best for you. And what I want you to do is I want you to take this time and I want you to pick up the phone and I want you to call those people. I want you to reestablish relationships. I want you to confirm relationships. I want them to know that you care for them, because if they care for you, I presume that you're caring for them. If you can do the list of 30, you can phone me back and I'll give you the rest of it, because the rest of it is that we start building up the list to 150. I have 5,000 people on my Facebook. I have 20,000 in my email database. I have almost 50,000 people on my social media, probably another 50,000 people for my radio. But when I had to make my list of 150, I could only get up to about 90. I had only about 90 people that I believed that literally genuinely cared for me and wanted the best for me, and also had the opportunity to make things. Terry's waving, she's also one of you. Thanks, Terry. 91 now. One of the things that we actually can do, and this is what happened when I went to my coach. I said to my coach, I am sad because Dunbar says that there are 150 that influenced my life and I can't get to 90. And he said, here's the joy. You can now choose the next 60. In other words, I can turn around and I can look at Hanley and I'll say, Hanley looks like a good human being. And the time when I was down, she was there looking. She was the one organizing psychologists for me and motivators and people who were going to give me advice on how to do my business. Maybe she is a potential number 92. Maybe if I took over a cup of coffee, or maybe if I picked up the phone, I could convince her to come and be part of my circle. I think for you in tourism, it's going to be exactly the same. One of the things that I did as well is that there were certain industries, and there's some of the most in the tourism industry, who owed me money. That I had done work for them, and this happened. And one particular company I had as an events company, I knew instantaneously that they were never going to be able to pay me. They'd immediately let all their people go home. And what I did with them immediately, the second I could, is I wrote to them and I said, as regarding that invoice, please disregard. Because I know you can't afford it, and I'm not going to pressurize you. I'm going to send you rude and nasty letters. The reality is that we can push, but blood doesn't come from a stone. And so what I've done is I've created, I believe, some goodwill between those people. And interestingly enough, both the CEO and the chairman, both have phoned me for social chats in the last month. I have never, ever received a phone call from them before. And this is for a small amount in terms of an invoice. Look for opportunities to create relationship. I want to say to you is that I don't want you to take this virus lightly, and I say this because I'm just a human. Don't take this lightly. People are going to get sick and people are going to die. And if I had to put you and say how seriously I believe that, is that I am 60 years old, I'm overweight, and I'm a severe asthmatic. I like to use my nebulizer once or twice a day because it helps me breathe. I am not confident in my ability to survive the virus. Honestly, if I had to take a bet, I would say it would be more than 50% chance I would probably not make it. That's a huge decision to make. And that's a huge statement to make, because I believe your own words become reality. So one of the things that I have decided to do on long discussion with my family is that I will remain in lockdown. I will remain in lockdown. Remember the 1918 Spanish flu? 50,000 people died. Most of the people didn't die in the first wave, they died in the second wave. They died when everybody thought it was all okay to go rushing around. So I want you guys, especially in the tourism industry, because there's many of you in this room today, when you are in large groups of people, make sure that you use the correct protective equipment and keep yourselves alive, and make sure that you survive this process. We are going to survive this process, but you can't take it casually. Whenever I hear people saying, meeting at my house, next 2 weeks' time, 60 of us, we're going to have a braai and stuff like it, I'm going nowhere near you or any of your friends. This is not the time to be doing those kind of things. All right. You've got to be looking after your health, and I'm sure LCB will speak a lot about this as well. But one of the things, and I spoke to Melanie Verwoerd. Melanie is just a little bit younger than me, and she got it, and so did her children. And they were all confined in the same house. Her daughter, who was under 30, who was enormously stressed and really, really tired from work, really, really struggled to beat the virus. And so one of the things I want to say to you is that you really should be in tip-top shape at the moment. If you can, tip-top shape for whatever that means for you. Make sure that you're eating well, make sure you're sleeping well, if you can get some exercise, and make sure you're taking some vitamins. This is like a flu. So make sure you're taking some good multivitamins and vitamin C's, whatever. I'm not an expert, and I'm sure one of the doctors later on will speak about this, but we've got to keep ourselves in good health. The last thing, which has been extremely encouraging for me, is where we go to in the future, is what this has done to the environment. I think every single day I see videos. I saw a kudu walking down the streets of Pretoria yesterday on a video. I saw penguins strolling down the streets of Simonstown. There are photographs of the air quality around the world. It's amazing. If you hear a lot of birds, and I'm sure you guys can hear birds in the background here, it's because my garden has turned into this blooming aviary where just thousands of birds have descended. I can hardly sleep in the mornings, but I'm not complaining. It's a beautiful thing. I think what happens when we come out of this situation that we have, we're going to have a slightly different world. And that's something that I want to just speak to at this moment in time. I think this is not just a reboot for your business, but this is a reboot for the world, and especially a reboot for South Africa. I want to read you something that the president said. I've had the good fortune of meeting him a few times. I don't think you can spell things out in a speech, but as somebody who teaches speakers and speech writing, I want you to listen to the words carefully, and you can hear what it means. This is Solomon Ramaphosa in his last speech. He says, as governments, as NGOs, as political parties, as large corporations, as financial institutions, as community organizations and South Africans, we have to adapt to a new reality. As we emerge from this crisis, our country will need to undergo a process of fundamental reconstruction. That's a very simple line. I realized something the other day, that my survival depends on the health of everybody in my community. And that includes the domestic worker, that includes the person who's standing at the spa and serving me. My mortality is dependent on everybody in my circle. And I am horrified at some of the conditions that some of them have to live into. And I think what happens, it's been 25 years now. We still haven't been able to make significant changes. I think if ever there was an opportunity, that this is the time. I have been greatly encouraged by the work of the government. One of the things that I was fascinated by was the fact that we were speaking about de-densifying townships if there should be a massive outbreak. Speaking about emptying out places like Khayelitsha and Dunoon and some of these giant townships. And I thought to myself, how can you possibly do this with 3 or 4 days of planning? And the reality is the plans are there already. If the will is there, it can be done. And one of the things that I want us to start thinking about and saying is, how can we change our environment completely, not just for ourselves and not just for our businesses, but to substantially, completely rethink what we do. I've also got really, really tired of the incredible, and I can't speak this to corporates, and sorry for Wirecard, but the incessant chase after wealth and profit cannot come behind people and the environment and the mental and physical well-being of our staff members. We have to say the number of corporate people that I come across that are absolutely broken, and very few of them make it to pensionable age, is not right. I think we have an opportunity in the reboot of you rebooting your business. I think some of the corporates are going to have to reboot and have a look. And one of the things that I know, one of the companies I spoke to last week, which has 1,200 employees, afterwards the managing director phoned me and he said, and I'm going to have him on my show, to say is that our company is never going to go back to the way we're doing before. We are going to completely look at the profit motives and look at how we're going to run our businesses to make us not only a profitable company, but a better company for everybody involved. In 2009, I started my speaking career in a moment like this. In 2009, I owned a training company, and I went along to a conference of estate agents, and I see there's one or two estate agents here today. And you will remember in 2009 that the banks refused to give any loans to anybody. And most of the estate agents that I've been speaking to hadn't earned an income for 5 months. Does that feel familiar for some of you? They hadn't earned an income for 5 months. And I was trying to sell them something. And I went to the organizer of the conference and I said, please don't put me up in front of these people. These people have no money. They're speaking about homeschooling their children. They're speaking about being unable to pay their bonds. I said, don't let me stand up there. And what happens, the organizer of the conference went up and he said, people, and he said this in Afrikaans, he said, people, I know times are especially difficult. And this is why. And then I could see nothing because a mist crossed over his face. And he said to them, and that's why I've asked Andre de Toy to come speak to you today. And I walked up there not knowing what to say and not having ever really addressed a really big audience in my life. And all I said was, this will pass. This will pass and you will survive. And the bank's not going to take your house and your kids will be okay. And you will have another business. And I bet you your business will be better off for the lessons that you have learned today. And what happens is that an interesting thing happened. I got a big standing ovation. Never had one before. You know, they're really hard to get if you're a speaker. And I got 70 bookings from them. And that led into a completely different career. I, in that moment, rebooted myself. I rebooted myself and I went from mathematician to speaker. I want to say to you is that I want you to look for those opportunities. This may be the perfect opportunity for you to reinvent yourself, or to reinvent your business, or to reinvent your position within one of these organizations, and to say, what do I really want from my life? Because there's nothing worse than just trundling along and not meeting the things that you want to do. So that 2009, all those estate agents, by the way, many of them today, I see them. Some of them stayed in the industry and some of them went on to make fortunes. Some of them moved from the industry and went to other industries and are terribly happy now and are ever grateful for that opportunity to say, you are not stuck in any one thing. I do want to say to you, though, is that things do change. 1918, one of the greatest encouragements from Dean Allen's talk for me is that in 1918, when the virus hit and people were dying everywhere, they never, ever found a cure. That's an interesting thing, and I still look today and I say, are we going to get vaccinations? Are we going to get cure? Everyone seems very confident, but the reality is we've never been able to do it before. So why do we think we can do it now? But here's the good news. Within about 18 months or 2 years, even that went away, and it's gone, and it's gone. We will survive this, and we will get over it, and we'll get over it, and we'll be better than we were before. I want you to commit, even if it's mentally in your mind. I know times are hard, and I know you're sad, and I know some of you are in difficult situations, but just allow yourselves the freedom to grieve and give yourself the opportunity to just allow your mind to do that reboot and say, what is next? For your attention and for all the the people that have logged on, thank you so much. It's wonderful having you here. And this will be available on tape, and as soon as we've edited, we'll give it through to Hanli. But to all of you, thank you very much. Hanli?
Thank you very much, Andre. As always, practical, but with the silver lining. At this point in time, I think we have another few minutes. If you want to pop your questions in the chat box at the bottom, I will give you a few minutes to compose some questions if you have questions for either Andre or myself. And while you do that, I'll just give you a few notes that I made. Thanks, Andre. So the chat box will come up any minute now. Terry, is it up?
Up, and I wanted to suggest everyone should unmute and give Andre a round of applause, and then I'll mute them all again. Should we do that?
Okay, perfect. So Terry is going to unmute everyone for a round of applause. We'll give him a standing ovation.
I never had one on Zoom before.
Ooh.
Andre, go.
Yeah, Andre.
Give him a round of applause. She unmuted everybody.
Thank you, Terry.
Okay, I'm going to mute everyone again. Hold on. And Hanli, just wait. I've got to unmute you. Mute all. Hang on. Let me unmute you.
Okay, great. Thank you, Terry. Yeah, thanks for that. That was a great initiative. So while you are popping your questions in the chat box, just a few comments from mine. From my perspective. As Andre was saying, I do believe changes are coming, and not just in the tourism industry or in the ones affected, but in all industries. So financial services is part of essential services. So we've all worked harder, I think, than we have ever before, trying to at least keep some momentum in the economy. But even with that, we are seeing rapid changes because of this virus, and things that no amount of legislation or funding previously could achieve. For example, in South Africa, we did the first ever contactless transaction in 2005. That is 15 years ago, and only now, because of this virus, is there a huge drive to promote contactless transaction in retail. So something that over many years and many millions of rands of marketing we could not achieve, we've managed to drive a huge amount of traffic onto contactless transacting, and also hopefully driven some of the cash transacting away. As you may or may not be aware, even though we've been a highly banked society in South Africa and we've made huge inroads in Africa in general, we still have a 95% cash dominant society in Africa. So hopefully this will also help us move some of that money electronic to be able to provide financial services to previously underbanked individuals. I personally believe that we are going to see changes happening to, for example, the way we do grant disbursement and aid relief disbursement. SASSA, I don't believe will look the same after this, which is a fantastic achievement. And I know that the government is currently working on ways to get relief aid to people that really need it. To Andre's point, second point, we need to remember to nurture our relationships and to build new ones. Sure, I think 90, I'm going to try my best, Andre, to get close to 90. But the one thing that, or the one anecdote that for me has always worked really well, and especially in a time where you are probably feeling quite negative, is to remember that you are the average of the 4 people you spend the most time with. So if you're spending all of your time with people that are currently super negative, you are going to ultimately be super negative. So I urge you to please make time to spend time with people that are positive, that want to build the future. So try and balance out who you spend the bulk of your time with. Please remember to take care of your health. It's super difficult during this time to remain healthy. I think stress is ultimately one of the biggest enemies to your immune system. So please take care of your stress levels. And then definitely in terms of the next steps, please join us for the session with Elsabe on Friday to help and get access to the tools to support you during this process, and the tools that Peter will give you to help rebuild. We are also using Peter's tools at the moment to rebuild our business. It's affected, as I said, all industries. And part of what we want to do is to rebuild the way we look at tourism from a financial services perspective. So we will be building the tourist of the future persona. So if you are keen to get involved, we will send out that link. If you want to be part of building that persona, please let me know. I definitely believe that from a tourism perspective, and I spent 10 wonderful years in tourism, so this is a very dear topic to me. I believe that we are going to rediscover our own country, and we are going to rediscover that local is really lekker and that you don't have to go overseas to have a fantastic time. I believe we are going to have family holidays, and we are going to stay close to home, and all the things we had on our rainy day list that happened to be 2 kilometers down the road and you never did, we are going to actually do those things now. So I don't believe all is lost. We just need to look at who the tourist is, and I think we may need to find that they are, we may find that they are sitting right next to us. And then just another gentle reminder that, you know, if you are feeling down, just watch Frozen. I really believe that the best thing, next thing to do is just the next right thing. It doesn't have to be rocket science. It doesn't have to be the final answer, but just do the next right thing. So I'm going to see if there are any major questions in the chat box now that we can open those up to Andre. There are lots of
questions I saw there was, is Cape Town going to be one of the preferred destinations? And I absolutely want to say yes to that. There's a number of things and reasons for that. I think honeydews, especially, I mean, everyone is speaking, it's going to be domestic tourism. We're not going to see international flights probably for the next 3 to 4 months, and possibly even longer, we don't know. But the reality is that, and I'll give you an initiative that I've seen in the property industry, there is a massive move afoot where especially Cape Town is being seen as a preferred destination. I think the way that we've handled this virus is going to come back and reward us if we don't make any mistakes now in terms of the lockdown. And I think people are going to feel more comfortable coming here. I mean, I would honestly rather come here for a holiday than go to Italy, for example, if I was a tourist. The second thing, which is also going to be of incredible value, and I haven't had a chance to speak about this today, is but we've obviously been through all the junk ratings and Moody's ratings, and don't let that frighten you. That's another talk on its own. But here's the good point about it is I was looking the other day and saying, is that in terms of pound level and advertising, we have become one of the cheapest destinations in the world. And in terms of property, an enormous number, the Minister of Home Affairs gave away 1,000 permanent residencies the other day for anybody who had more than 25 million rand to invest into the country. And strangely enough, that ends up being just over 500,000 pounds, and it's probably within the buying range of every single pensioner. And so the reality is that we've got almost 1,000 pensioners moving in down to Cape Town with 25 million rand in their back pockets, which is an incredible source of business for the property industry, but also for the tourism industry. And I believe if people feel that they can retire here, I believe definitely they think they want to come tour here. For some of those eerie videos that you've seen where the streets of Cape Town are empty, I must say we are so familiar with Cape Town, but every time I look at it and I think, oh my word, is this just the most amazingly beautiful place that you've ever seen? So I think what happens is that I think it's going to be a strong place in terms of the rand, but I'm hoping as well is that you guys are going to do some good marketing, and when it opens up is that we're going to do one of the things that I will say, and I'm not going to prescribe to tourism. I think as we start looking more for things of value or things of the heart and things that really matter, I think we really should be looking at things like tourism with a purpose. I think many people are going to start saying is that I want to come, and not only want to come, but I want to make a difference, or I want to learn something, or I want to experience something, and not just a holiday. I think that is becoming, I think it's already something that's quite big, and I think that will become even bigger into the future. So yeah, that was the one question. Hannah, I don't know if you saw any others there.
No, there were quite a few questions regarding next step and a link to this recording. So just to recap, you will be receiving an email from the team this week, the mail that you used to register, that will give you details of the next 2 sessions. So the Friday one with LCB and the one with Peter next week. It will also give you additional reference material, Andre, that you mentioned some of the statistics and interesting reading if you want some additional reading. It will also give you the contact details for the support line that LCB will be speaking around on Friday. And then also a link that if you want to join us on rebuilding the tourism industry and using the tools that Peter will explain for us next week, if you want to join our team to rebuild financial services and financial support for the tourism industry, please feel free then on that link to join us on that, so that you'll receive an email with the link to this, a link to join us on the tourism rebuild, and all of the information around the next events.
The reality is that none of my presentation was sucked out of my head. The reality is behind the scenes there are documents and statistics that are available. One of the things that I will make available is Professor Kareem's talk. I know it's not easy, but listen to it and look at the statistics, because the reality is that you will be able to stand up and say, this is when the lockdown will change, because he tells you exactly what he's telling the president. And the president has given him permission to show you, if the numbers do this, this is what we do. If the numbers do this, we go back into lockdown. And he explains that all very, very carefully. And some of the other documentation and stuff that I've been speaking from, this stuff doesn't just happen. These are documents that the government is currently working on, and we'd love to make that available to you. And we'll include that in terms of that email that goes out to you.
Thank you very much, Andre. I don't see any other major questions, but please stay safe, keep yourselves locked down and healthy. And if you have any questions, the team will mail you this week. You're welcome to reach out to us. We would be able to support, and we'd be happy to support wherever possible. So thank you again for joining. Have a super day, everyone. Thanks again, Terry, for all of the work in the background. We really appreciate that. And Andre, thanks again, and we will see you guys all on Friday.
Pleasure. I've unmuted everyone. Let's give Hanley
okay, guys, you can. Bye.